do 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 do. Sweet. We're up and running, I think. Turn some lights on. There we go. Get some more lights. That's probably a little bit too much lights, but it'll do. It's good enough for government work. Alright, let's make sure that we are running. We are up and running, and that is good. So today, feeling a little bit crappy, so we're not going to play a full game. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the basics of the rules to play Warcry. Basically, the other time that I played a game, I got a text from my mom saying, "Oh my God, there's so much math," and I kind of want to address that because it seems like if you do just watch a game without understanding the rules, it does seem like there is a lot of math. But there's actually not. It's actually super simple. So I kind of want to run over that today. And in that time, we're also going to talk about sort of general rules for war games and nomenclature and stuff like that. So, alright, let's get going. So, Warcry, which is what I've been playing the last couple of Sundays, is a skirmish version of Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar is the fantasy Warhammer setting. So think like orcs and elves, but without guns. Bows and swords and knights and horses and sort of all the kind of fantasy trappings you'd normally have. The plot from this originally came from a game called Warhammer Fantasy, but that's since been sort of broken down and has now been turned into Age of Sigmar, which is like a more high fantasy version of it, but the rules are different now and stuff. The rules are actually better. So, and Warcry is the skirmish version of that. So, skirmish basically means you play with less models, and typically instead of being a unit, you move them independently. So, for example, if you were to play Age of Sigmar normally, these guys would probably have to stay within distance of each other. But in Warcry, one of them can go over here, one of them can be over here, and they'll act independently. So like, I can use this guy, and then my enemy can use a guy, and then I can use this guy, and my enemy can use a guy like that. Instead of having to use them all at the same time. So, yeah. Typically with skirmish games, you also tend to have between like 5 to 20 models in total, instead of having a giant, massive, like potentially like hundreds and hundreds of models of army. For example, like it isn't uncommon to see like a block of like 40 grots, and that's just one unit in the army, But with this, that would be like 5 or 6 war bands kind of thing. So, yeah. So that's these guys. And that's the sort of basics of what Warcry is. I do tend to like skirmish games bigger than the massive games. I think they're funner. I think once games start getting so big, they run into a real problem with like first turn and stuff like that, and it becomes a big play component. I think that's kind of lame. So, war games also typically have you go, I go kind of rules, so it also helps there as well. So I think that's pretty fun. So that's the basics of what Warcry is. So if you want to play it, what do you need? So the trick to pretty much any single war game out there, what you're going to need is you're going to need a book for the rules for the game, the rules for your guys, somewhere to play, and then dice and measures. And that's pretty much everything you need. And that as a point is going to be true for any war game. So, you need the book, which is going to have the rules of how to play the game, just so you can learn them. You're going to need The rules for your guys, so you know what they do. You're going to need somewhere to play on, and you need dice and or a roller. And that's it. That's the basics for everything, whatever you need in different war games. And it's just where to get those is different in different games. Some games it might be, oh, you need 2 books to have all the rules for your guys, so now you have to have 2 books for them. Or, oh, the core rules, the rules for the game are free, but you have to buy the rules for the guys, or you have to, do something like that. Or it might be the rules for the guys are free, and you have to buy the rules for the game because they come back together. It really varies from game to game, but that's the core for basically any war game out there. So for Warcry, the core rules come in a rulebook. Now there is a starter set for Warcry. It's called Warcry Catacombs. It's a pretty good starter set, especially if you like the factions in it. And it will get you one of these, but you can also buy them separate. So inside the core rulebook, you're going to have a bunch of fluff, a bunch of stories talking about, Warcry, some cool pictures and models and stuff. You're going to have the basics of playing the roles, the generic abilities, what your guys can do when they do it, and the different ways to play. You're going to have a bunch of rules for playing through sort of narrative campaign stories, one of which I'm probably going to start in the new year. And then it has a bunch of narrative and special stuff for playing those campaigns for specific guys. So for the basic starter warbands, this has rules for that. There's also some name generators, which aren't really useful. And this is where we start getting into the battle plans, right? So how to set up the board, and how you should do deployment and stuff like that. So these you can put them in here. They're all numbered 1 through 6. And what you would do is you just roll a dice and pick one. Alternately, there are sets of cards for them. So these are just sort of a nice kind of fun thing for setting up those battle plans. Now when I'm actually playing Warcry, what I like to do with the cards, because normally you roll a dice and you pick whatever one the number corresponds to. I like to modify it a little bit because some of these are very silly, and I like that. I think that's fun, but they might really screw over your opponent or something like that. So it's fun to have a little bit of control over fate. So instead of just picking one, I like to pick 3, and then both me and my opponent get to remove one from the table. So say they would get rid of this one, and then I would be like, oh, I want to get rid of this one. Okay, well, the one that's left, this is the one we're going to play with. And it has some kind of effect, and that's the effect we're going to use. It's not an actual rules thing. It's just a thing I like to do because I think it's fun, and sometimes it can make it a little more fair for the rules for your opponent. So say your opponent has like a really elite army, and you have a really heavy horde army, and you get one that really favors you. That's cool. It's whatever. Warcry is more casual, but giving them the ability to have a little bit more control over that's kind of fun. So that's what I like to do with the battle plans. That's an aside. We'll get to battle plans later, but all right. So that's the rules for the core game. Now you need the rules for your guys. So say I'm going to play the trees. I've got these spooky, scary skeleton trees. Behold, their bases aren't done. Ooh, skeleton tree. I got distracted by the incoming hive fleet, so their bases aren't done. But let's say we want the rules for them. There's a bunch of different ways you can get those. There are new big rule books that I don't have any of yet that have all of the rules for a specific faction. So if you want to play Forces of Order, say you wanted to play Trees, or Stormcast Eternals, or Sexy Dwarves, what are they called? Fire Slayers. Say you wanted to play them, there's a book, you pick that up, it's got all the cards, all the rules for them specifically in it. You can just photocopy off the sheets, you're golden. Alternately, you can get sets of cards for each set of these characters. Now, a set of cards is going to contain a bunch of little cards, it's going to contain a bunch of big cards. So the big cards are not in English. We'll find the English one. It's in here somewhere. There we go. Okay. So on one side of the big card, it's going to show you all of the kinds of guys you can legally run in this list. Now, this doesn't include all the models for your faction. There's probably going to be some that don't have Warcry rules. The general rule of thumb is the really big stuff, like the big monsters and all, generally don't have Warcry rules. Because they are big fucking monsters and they fucking decimate everything. Sometimes they have rules, like with the Flesh Eater Courts. Their big zombie bat has rules, stuff like that. The Beasts of Chaos, their big sexy cowman, totally has rules. But generally, everything, the bigger stuff, rule of thumb generally doesn't. It's generally more troops, more elite kind of guys that do. So one side you'll have a picture of everything telling you what you can have in the game, and on the other side you'll have a picture telling you what they can do. So on this side, this is going to be the special abilities for your guys. So this is special actions they can do during the game. And we'll get to those some more in a little bit. So that's the basic rules for my spooky tree men here. Now each fighter is going to have some stats. We don't care about those cards, they're fucking stupid. And that's where the little cards come in. These, by the way, are if you have duplicates of fighters, you can like put them on the side and then put dice on them. I think that's stupid. I like to put the dice with the guy, otherwise it kind of gets confusing for me and my opponent. So I think those are dumb. These are the rules for the specific unit. So let's find the one we have. Let's say let's pick the guy with the scythe. Oh. Okay. There's actually two guys with scythes. So let's take a look at them. So you can see that they've got some differences. Guy at the bottom generally overall has higher numbers. Now why is that? That's because he's the leader variant. So this model can either be a leader or a regular guy. The leader variant is generally better but more expensive. That's the general rule you'll come across for most models if they have a leader variant. So let's say we want him to be the normal guy. We don't want him to lead our pack. We'll have someone else lead our spooky trees. That's not him. Okay, so here's our guy. Up here in the top, that's our cost. That's how much having this guy in our team is going to cost. He's going to cost 190 points. General rule of thumb is to play 1,000 points. So that's each side having 1,000 points, so you have an even battle, an even team. So he's going to cost us 190 of that. This mark here tells us that he's a tree. We already knew that because he's a fucking tree. He's got 4-inch move here. He has 30 life here. And he has 4 armor. So that's how tough he is. That's his toughness. Right there. Now, down here, we're going to see what weapon he has. He's got his big spooky scythe. It can hit guys up to 2 inches away. It hits 3 times. It hits 4 hard. And it does 3 damage on a normal hit and 6 damage on a crit. So they did this thing where they tried to use these symbols instead of using any kind of verbiage so that they can print these off easier. Which is why you get all the languages in one pack, because then they only had to produce 1 pack and then can send it out. Yada yada. That's easier for them. But really, the symbols aren't that bad. You know, it'd be like, oh, okay. You know, that's fight. That's how strong the fight is. That's his damage. So they're actually not too bad. So say we want him in our team. He's 190 points. We have his rules in these cards. So you can buy the cards independently. They can come in a big book, or if you buy one of the starter boxes for a faction, like this one here that I bought on a whim while I was at the hobby store, hence why I have spooky trees now. It's going to come with the rules in the box. So that's where I got these cards. They came in the rules for the box. You're also going to get a bunch of tokens. So these are wound counters and objective markers, stuff like that. There are also markers to say, you know, if your guys have gone, so you can use these to say your guys have gone or not. And also tokens to say like who goes first, things like that. I generally use these because they're a little brighter and they show up on camera. These are from a Warhammer Kill Team tournament. They're one of the gifts for participating. So I generally use these because they show up on camera better. But you do get a set of those if you pick up the cards. Okay, so that's where to get the core rules. Boom, right here. And that's where to get the rules for your guys. If you buy one of these boxes, you get the guys with the rules. It's pretty good. So that's pretty sweet. Now, table area, obviously you can play anywhere. This is intended to be on a specific table size that I believe is 22 by 30. If you pick up one of the starter boxes, it will come with a mat. If you buy one of the specific Warcry terrain sets, they generally come with a board as well. Usually these are super thick cardboard. I've got this mat here on my folding table. This is where I shoot everything at. This is not the correct size. This is actually the correct size for playing larger 40K. But honestly, some of it hangs over the edge. So it's about okay. You know, I'm just playing with myself, sitting here filming and you know, for YouTube, whatever. It's not a tournament, you know. It's good enough. The board looks fun. It looks nice. This is a cool mat. I don't remember where I got this. But it's pretty nice. There's a little bit of printing texture in it. But you can't see it from far away. You definitely can't see it on the camera, so that's nice. But pretty cool. You know, it does the job. But if you were to want the actual official board size, 22 by 30. Pretty easy. Alright, dice. You can get dice anywhere you want. But you need 6-sided dice because they're going to be everything, and you need at least 6 of them at very absolute minimum. These are the Warcry dice that come with the starter set. These aren't the best dice, but they are nice and big and chunky. They're the biggest, chunkiest dice I have. So they're the ones I like to use on camera. So for my dice, I also have as an add-on one of these. So this is going to help me track specifically like how many dice I have in relation to the initiative. I just think these are cool. They help me remember, because trying to remember that I have special abilities and stuff I can use is something I forget a lot. So I think this is fun. It's just a cute little thing. My dog chewed on it a little, which is why the corner's a little messed up. It's just a cute little thing. Not needed at all. But I think it's neat. You're going to need a ruler. Starter sets come with one of these actually surprisingly nice clear rollers. I actually tend to use this like all the time. In Warcry, it is very rare to find an attack that is longer than 12 inches, so a crappy, sort of clear, bendy, wiggly ruler like this is actually fantastic for that. Instead of having like a big, huge, like tape measure kind of thing like you would for 40k, where they have like 48-inch attacks and stuff. So just pretty much any ruler, even if it's only a 12-incher, that sounded weird. Even if it's only 12-incher, it'll do because it'll cover most attacks. So yeah, so that's everything on what you needed to play. So, setting up a warband. Alright. Generally, unless specified other ways, a warband is going to include 1,000 points worth of guys. So that is the points up in the corner there. So for example, I could take like a ton of these trees, right? I could take like 8 of these trees or something. Because I'd also have to have a leader, so it would get a little more tricky than just simple math. But about 1,000 points in total. So put together your 1,000 point team, right? Let's say that this is it here. This is obviously not 1,000 points. For the point of just going over it quickly. Alright, so I've got a 1,000 point team. My opponent has a 1,000 point team. First thing we do is we're going to divide our teams up into 3 groups. Why do we do this? Some of the deployments require guys to come in at different times. So, you know, some of your guys might show up at the beginning, and some of your guys might show up at the end, you know, maybe like you have like a spearhead that's going to hit the enemy first, and then your big body of your army shows up at the end, you know. You know, a bunch of narrative reasons for them. All the cards, they all have like a cute little story on it. But you're going to divide your group up into three groups, and they call them the hammer, the dagger, and the shield. And basically, you just have to have somebody in each one. You can't all dump them into one, because that's just kind of cheaty and douchey. So you don't want to do that. There's some car work going on outside, apparently. All right, so let's say this is gonna be my hammer. That's gonna be my shield. And this guy's gonna be my dagger. All right, so we're gonna divide them up into 3 groups. Now, what are we gonna do? Well, now we're gonna determine the battle plans. Now, one of the options for these are terrain rules. So you can be like, oh, I just want to set the terrain up myself because I want it to be a specific story, or I want it to look a specific way, or you can use the cards to do it. So let's say you're not going to worry about the terrain cards, but if you did, they'd have to match specific terrain. So this is a little money grubby if you want specific terrain to match the rules. I have it from the starter set, which is why I use the terrain cards sometimes. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't use them ever. Okay. So, all right. Now we're gonna have to determine 3 more things before we can start our game. Now, sometimes you're gonna pick a static mission, and you're not gonna roll on any tables or pick any cards or anything like that. Sometimes you're going to pick a static mission. It's going to have all this determined for you. Lots of times if you were to play like a game in like White Dwarf or like a special battle, it would have that all determined, but this is just sort of a generic setup game. Alright, so me and my opponent, we both have our 3 groups. Now we're gonna draw some cards. So we're going to draw one from each set. Now, I do like to draw the 3 and let my enemy, my opponent discard 1, and then I discard 1. So, boom, boom. Alright. So this is our victory. This is our victory card. It's what's going to tell us how we win. basically. You know, how do you score points? How you win the game. This one is about. This one's about basic. This one is essentially capture the hill, you know, king of the hill kind of thing, which is pretty awesome. So, all right. So now we have a condition for winning. Now we're going to do the same thing again. So I'm going to draw 3. Let my opponent get rid of 1. I'm going to get rid of 1. So this is our deployment. This is how our guys are going to come onto the battlefield. So the point of these different things is to add variance. So when you play a static mission of 40k, the deployment and the victory condition are always the same. So you're like, oh, this is Dawn of War style deployment, and you know our condition is burn, whatever. So this is breaking that up. This is throwing a monkey wrench into the normal play, and it is producing, you know, some variance between each game. So each game is always different, you know. So in this one, we'd be playing King of the Hill. We would deploy like this. Now on this card, it's probably a little hard to see on camera, but there are marks for dagger, shield, and hammer, and they tell you what round they come in at. So in this one, the 2 daggers would be starting on round 1, the 2 shields would be coming in at round 2, and the 2 hammers would be coming in at round 2. And this shows you where they come in on the battlefield. So that's, you know, it's showing you where they're going to start. It's adding some variance in there. Okay. So we have where our guys are going to start, how they're going to come into the battlefield, and we have what they need to do to win. Now the third set of cards we're going to draw is called the Twist. Now you don't really need to play with these, but they're generally fun. Come on, come on, come on, please, 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 no. There we go. Generally it's going to be called the Twist. So these add a little bit of fun, they add a little bit of weirdness. Maybe they're going to make it so you can't shoot very far. Maybe they're going to make it so your guys can't charge very far. Maybe you're going to empower your guys so they hit really hard. Maybe they're going to attack multiple times. This one gives you an ability that your guys can use, which makes them heal, which is pretty rad. So these are all going to be pretty random, but they're generally cool. They're fun. There's no reason not to use the Twist. You know, it's generally going to add just a little bit of weirdness to the game, which is pretty cool. Alright, so now we have our basics for our game set up. So now we would determine who gets to go first. So the rulebook calls this the hero phase, I believe, but that's kind of... They like to use terms like that because it makes writing other rules easier. But basically you're determining who goes first. How do you do that? 6 dice. 6 dice. And now we figure out what matches and what doesn't. Okay, so got 4 that don't match, and I've got 1 set of 2 that do. Okay, now my opponent's going to roll 6 dice. Alright, so my opponent has 2 doubles and 3 that match. So the one that matches, these unlock the ability to use abilities. So I'm going to be able to use 1 double ability, and my opponent is going to be able to use 1 double ability and 1 triple ability. And he has 1 single dice all by himself. I have 4. The person with the most single dice gets to go first. Simple as that. Basically, the logic of this is that you are trading abilities for initiative. So you get the first hit, in the game. And, you know, you get your guy to go first, which can sometimes really win or lose a game, in exchange for your guys being able to do other stuff later on. So I'm going to put these on my handy dandy little thing here. Alright, I've got one double. Now, every game, each opponent gets one dice to do what they want with in the initiative. So I want to add it to one of these. I'm going to give myself another double. Now I'm down to 3 singles. If I had less singles and there was some way for the opponent to tie me up, say they wanted to add a single to their dice with their special dice, we would now have to roll off to see who gets to go first. This is their way of like competing for initiative. But thankfully that didn't happen. So there's no way for my opponent to catch up with me. So they would determine what they want to do with their special dice. Say they maybe wanted to have a quad instead of a three, something like that. They'd figure it out. But all the singles, they all don't matter. All right. So these are my dice for using abilities. Well, what do abilities do? If you go back to our ability card, you're going to notice that each one of these has a couple of things. It's got a mark that says that tree people can do it, here on the left. And then it's got a mark for which tree people can do it. So not all tree people can use all abilities. And then it says in the brackets there what kind of ability it is. Is it a double, a triple, or a quad? That ties into doubles, triples, and quads. So if I have a double, I can use it to spend one of these abilities here. So let's go back to our where is he? Here he is. Let's go back to our tree man from earlier. So in his scythe, right here, there is a rune mark. That ties into what abilities he can do. So that spiky skull rune mark is right here. So he can do trample underfoot. And it's going to have some kind of effect, and it's going to cost me a double. So if when I go to play him, I want to use that, I basically take a double and I throw it away. And I've used it. And he can use that ability. Now, if I was playing, say, Little Tree Lady here, Little Tree Lady doesn't have that ability, so she can't use a double to do that. Nice and simple. If they have the mark that corresponds with ability, if it's their turn, if you have the dice for it, nice and easy. So that's the basics for dice. Now you can use these at any time, but everybody can only do them once per turn. So if it's, say, the scythe guy's time to activate, he can't use all of my dice unless he's the last model on the table, like, you know, last man standing kind of thing. Then he gets special rules. Otherwise, he can only use one at a time. Alright. So, that's it for initiative. After that, we would go into turn 1. So, I've got my guys on the board. My enemy's got his guys on the board. We all have them set up for deployment. We all know what victory is. We have our dice for that turn. We also know who's going first, which, in the example of this dice, would have been me. So, let's say... let's say that I'm all the big trees. Okay? I'm all the big trees. My opponent is the little tree. RIP for him. Okay, so we are, let's say we're deployed like this. Now I get to activate. So I get to pick one model, and that model gets to do two things. Now there's a bunch of different things it can do that count for that, but basically it can move and it can attack. Those are the simplest ones. That's 99.99% of your things it's going to do. Anything else is pretty much like a special rule that the mission will tell you. So let's look at our tree buddy here again. So just like last time, he's got a 4-inch move and a 2-inch attack. So 4-inch move, 2-inch attack. So let's measure out 4 inches because he's going to come and try to hit the little tree lady. So 4 inches from his base, going to put him right there. Alright, now it's definitely within 2 inches of being able to hit her. So he's going to hit her. So one of his two actions was used on moving. Now the other one's going to be used on attack. Now if we return to his card again, we can see he has 3 attacks. So we're going to grab 3 dice, and we're going to roll 3 dice. Alright, so I have a 3, a 2, and a 4. Now he has a strength of 4. What about the little tree lady? We know how strong he is. How tough is she? Let's look it up. The little tree lady has a toughness, the symbol of the shield, of 3. So he is stronger than she is tough. Why is that important? So that's going to determine whether or not these dice do damage. And it's a super simple little averages calculation. But it's going to tell us whether or not he can actually hurt her. What is that for? Why don't I just roll dice and I have, if it's a 3, my guy hits or whatever. That calculation, one, is to add variance between all of the models, so that the bigger guys have an easier time wounding the little guys, or the less armored later guys, they can be hit harder, but they might move faster and they might do more crits, things like that. It's all adding variance to add differentiation between the models in the game. So if you reduce the dice down too much, what ends up happening is that everything becomes the same. And you basically remove the variation of the puzzle pieces or the chess pieces from having uniqueness in their roles. So you actually want some level of variance all the time because it makes the game more interesting. So, okay, so he is stronger than she is. So, the basic calculation for whether or not you can hit something is if you are as strong as they are, you get a 4, a 5, or a 6. So that's 3 sides for wounding the enemy. That's a 50% dice roll. So if you are the exact same, you are always going to have a 50% chance of hurting the enemy. If the enemy is tougher than you are strong, you are going to have a 5 and a 6. You're going to be on a, as they say, 5 up. Or 5 plus. And that's going to give you 36% or so chance of wounding the enemy. Now, if you are stronger than the enemy is tough, as is this case, you're going to get a 3, where's the 4, a 5, and a 6. So you are going to always wound on about 68% of the time. That's just the rough percentages based on the damage of the dice. So if we go back and we look at our dice here, we can see that I am stronger than she is tough. And we can see I have a 4, I have a 3, and I have a 2. So this 2, I don't care about that. That bounced off her armor, or it hit the ground, or she blocked it, or a million other things could have happened. But I hit twice. I've got 2 hits that went through her damage into her and did some damage to her. So now we're going to figure out how much damage they did. The numbers 3 and 6 here tell us how much damage. On the left is the damage for the average hit, and on the right is the damage for a crit. So crits is our 6s. If you roll 6, you get a crit. Super cool, you get a bunch of extra damage. On the left, so we're going to be having done 3 and 3, 6 points of damage to the little tree lady. Actually, we'll mark that out with this. 6 points of damage on her. Alright, so that was my turn. Now, since this is a you go, I go style game, my enemy gets to go. So the little tree lady gets to go now. So we can look at the little tree lady's stats. She has 1-inch attack with her little claws. They're not little, they're fucking massive. And she's got 4-inch move and 16 life. So, let's see if she is close enough to attack. Alright, they're within 1 inch of each other, so she's going to get to attack. So, she gets 5 attacks. Let's roll those out. And she's actually pretty strong. So, she is 4 strength versus my guy's toughness, which is 4. So that is equaling out. So she's going to wound on 4 ups. 4, 5s, and 6s. 6s being crits. Alright, so we can get rid of these. So she hits twice. So she's going to hit for 2 damage. And then she's going to hit for 4 damage. So she's going to do 6 damage back to my tree guy. Alright, now let's pick another tree guy. Because the game is going to keep going in this fashion until we run out of guys to play with. So let's use up all of our tree guys and we'll see what they can do. Okay. So we're going to activate the archer tree guy. So he has a couple of different attacks. He can attack at melee, or he can attack in ranged. Now, the ranged, the one with the bow picture, has a minimum distance. So if he is within range of an enemy, he can't use his bow. He can only punch people. So he actually has a 2-inch range dead zone where he can't do anything. So, for example, if this guy here with the scythe, who can hit within 2 inches, was 2 inches out from this guy, he couldn't do jack shit. He can't shoot him with his bow, and he can't punch him. Which means that if it was this guy's turn to activate, he would have to waste a turn to move to hit. Just sharing, because it's fun. Okay, so we've got a 3 to 20 ranged attack. Now, in a lot of war games, you can't shoot into melee combat. In Warcry, you can. So my ranged guy, he's going to pew-pew and try to shoot little bird lady. Two attacks. A 1 and a 2. That's not going to do anything. So since he has 2 actions, he will get to attack again. One of those would hit for 2 damage. Now, the other thing that you could do, let's add some terrain. Alright, so those are now terrain. So my enemy is out of model, so he doesn't get to go. So it's my turn now. So this guy is going to move, and he's going to use his 4-inch move to get on top of the terrain. Now, when you're moving up and over things, you have to measure the distance to them and then the distance up. So in this instance, it would have been 1 inch 2 and then 3 inches up. So he's got 4 inch move, so it worked out. Now, you have the choice of jumping or climbing. So I can climb down here, at which point I have to measure the distance to move down, or I can just jump down. Now, when I jump down, I run the risk of hurting yourself if it's too high. So if you fall more than 3 inches, your guy might hurt himself. So let's say he jumps down, like that. I now have to roll a dice. And on a 50% dice roll on a 4 up, he's going to take some damage. He does not, because it was a 1. Now, if it had been a 4 or a 5, he'd take 1 point of damage. If it had been a 6, he would have taken 3. So, just a nice little thing so you don't always have to measure to climb down. Your guys can, like, bounce off the terrain and jump down and stuff. So, pretty cool. Now, this would be the end of that battle round. Now, say on battle round 2, some more enemies would start to come in, like they said in our deployment, or maybe the battlefield would change based on the twists, stuff like that. But that would be the basics of one battle round right there. So yeah. So that is Little Tree Men playing sort of 1 through battle round. Now, there are special battle rounds where you can play with other people. There are battle rounds where you can play against other people. I have been using the Wild Fighter rules from the Tome of Champions 2019 to play by myself, because it essentially gives you single player rules. So yeah, but that's pretty much the basics of it. So again, just, where to get your core rules come from the core rule book. The rules for your guys come from cards, which you can get in a number of places that I talked about, and then sort of what they all do. This game is very, very simple, enjoyably so. Like, it's not intended to be mega complex. It's intended really to be sort of like fun and kind of light. A lot of the conditions and stuff that you'll get in the game are sort of silly. There's one, for example, that is literally get to the high ground before the board floods. And then there's things like King of the Hill, or if you wanted to play zombie or capture the flag, or pretty much all those like standard video game modes are actually all in this, which is really cool. But yeah, that's the basics to playing Warcry. One quick little line, nothing particularly crazy, and showing off some spooky trees. But hopefully this was helpful and interesting, and maybe showed that the math isn't so complex. There's really only one math equation in the whole thing, and that is, am I tougher than you or strong? But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I will be streaming again on Wednesday. I'm going to be doing some, hopefully painting some Tyranids. And then next Sunday I will be playing probably the start of my Warcry campaign. I'll be running some guys through one of their campaigns all the way from start to finish. So that'll be pretty cool. And they'll be picking up wards and stuff. We'll be playing against different enemy factions each time. So it should be pretty good. So hopefully this was interesting. Thank you guys for watching. If you have more questions, leave them anywhere. But thank you guys.